Ah. You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This week we will be talking about the horror film The Belko Experiment, directed by Greg McLean and released March 17th, 2017.
Oh, I remember when this one came out, I was so excited to go see it because I thought, it's a cross between Office Space.
We're not going to do that.
Royale.
It's fine. It's okay. But then the other one that I was considering, other than Godzilla -1, which we absolutely will do, I just don't think it's going to be available to watch before the Oscars or like right away. But we will get to it when it is there because it was an incredible movie and we're definitely going to cover it. But the other one that is available that might fit is The Creator. It is more sci-fi action drama. Yeah. Which, I mean, we've touched with that before. You know, we've done Battle Los Angeles, but those were aliens. The Creator is AI. Yeah. Same with like Tomorrow War. It's kind of the same thing. It's a war movie, action thing, sci-fi. But again, it's aliens and time travel and things like that. And this is just like AI that people have created and then they evolved a mind of their own and kind of became a part of civilization. Sorry to spoil the tiniest little bit about The Creator for you. But so that's so it kind of fits, but also, I don't know. So I'm still considering doing it, but we're taking a little break from Oscar stuff to do this week. But if you guys want to hear our coverage of The Creator, you don't have to twist my arm too hard. I'm totally down to watch it again and cover it because I did really enjoy that film. So let us know. But for now, Oscar coverage, take a little break. We're doing Belko because it's a quick one. It's a fun one. It's one of Daphne's absolute favorite movies. I really enjoy it too. So yeah, it's a fun episode for us to kind of do after the last two Oscar movies being a little heavier conversations in different ways. But yeah.
Yeah, they were. But they were great conversations. I feel really proud of those two episodes because I think we handled all of the nuances really well, and I just really enjoyed our conversations about the films and everything inclusive within it. So I'm glad, though, to get a break and get a chance to do this one, because I've wanted to do it for a long time, and I just hadn't, there were other films on the horizon for us, so it didn't come into my head until this week when we were thinking, okay, what movie should we do? And I just was feeling it this week because it's one that I know really well. It's like Snakes on a Plane, not because the movie is actually like Snakes on a Plane. It's like that in that it's something that I'll have on in the background sometimes if I'm trying to get something done because I don't have to pay attention to it. I know what's going on in it. And it doesn't really distract me. And I even debated, do I need to watch it again? Or am I good to talk about it? Because I feel like I already know it. So, yeah. It's part of this group of Office type movies where things go horribly wrong. Like we had Mayhem that we covered. There's another one, I think it's called Office Uprising, that is more campy, kind of like Mayhem, that we could do later. And then there's this one, which is much more serious in nature. But I'm glad that we're doing this one. It's one that I've wanted to do for a while, so it'll be fun to get to talk about it.
For sure.
So we'll do that, how we always do, starting with some production notes. So it was filmed in Bogota, Colombia. was written by James Gunn and based on a dream that he had of an office building with employees being instructed to kill each other. That's quite a dream. He started writing it back in 2007, but when the film was actually greenlit, the timing was off. And so Gunn turned it down. Then years later, he was contacted to see if he was still interested in doing it. But he didn't have the time to direct it himself because he was working on this other little-known film that you may have heard of called Guardians of the Galaxy. It had a budget of $5 million and grossed $11.1 million at the box office. It's 89 minutes long, which makes it easily consumable. Pake, give us a synopsis.
In a twisted social experiment, 80 Americans are locked in their high-rise corporate office in Bogota, Colombia, and ordered by an unknown voice coming from the company's intercom system to participate in a deadly game of kill or be killed.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Absolutely.
IMDb? So simple. So simple, so easy. Why reinvent the wheel when someone else has already done it?
This job is real easy for me. It's copy and paste and done. And I don't deny it.
No. You have to own it. If you're going to do that, you've got to own it. Yeah, just go for it. So this is our third John Gallagher Jr. film. We did Hush, did 10 Cloverfield Lane, doing the Belko Experiment. He's great in every movie we do. Like, I mean, he's great in any movie he's in, but I feel like the three that we've talked about are some of his best films. Belko doesn't get a ton of love from the critics or people in general, but I think he does a great job as Mike Milch, and I buy him as the unlikely hero or last man standing of the movie.
Yeah, I like John Gallagher Jr. I don't know, like, I haven't really seen other stuff that he's done much, I don't think, outside of the movies we've covered. But yeah, he's kind of become a regular, third time Run for Your Lives character here. Always do enjoy seeing him when he comes up in a movie that we're doing, so yeah.
Yeah, I keep checking. It's like, is there something else that he's doing that we could cover? Talking about his character is just always fun because you can tell that he puts everything into it. And so I really enjoy that about his acting style. So. Yeah.
So I guess before we get into characters, probably Mike, again, he said as the hero, the survivor, the main guy. We'll start with him. But yeah, just quickly, just some of the other cast. I'm not going to go over everybody, but there are certain cast members and stuff that it is a fun cast. I mean, clearly James Gunn has his favorites, like Michael Rooker, David Dastmalchian, his brother Sean. We see pop up all the time. But there's other great ones. The main one I want to point out, and we'll talk more about his character, but John C. McGinley.
I knew it.
Always a treat. I mean, he's forever Dr. Cox to me, but legitimately outside of acting, he's just one of the best human beings that exists. He's such an incredible person. I've listened to several interviews and podcast episodes with him and stuff, and just the community work that he does with special needs outreach and things like that, because he's got a special needs child, and even just stuff that he's written and done and worked on and all of that. And plus, he's such a good person. The complete opposite of a human being of the character he plays in this movie. And so anytime I see McGinley, I love that. He's great.
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking about, he's just such a good human. All I could think is, too bad the same can't be said for Wendell Dukes, because he's deplorable.
He's great at playing assholes. Yeah, he's just usually the nicest, best people are really good at turning that on for a role sometimes. It's weird.
Yeah. It's kind of odd. I mean, especially when you're watching a movie and you're not supposed to like someone and you hate them, you know that the actor is doing a really good job to make you hate them, especially if you are such a fan of that actor's work and they're playing a bad guy. You just can't help it. You want to like them, but you can't. And what he does with Wendell Dukes is just, it's creepy and terrifying and annoying at times, but he makes it work. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch him in that role. Yeah, you mentioned Sean Gunn. He actually got to pick the character he wanted to be. And I'm so glad that he picked Marty, because Marty is one of the points in this movie that I just really enjoy. So I'm glad that he picked that. The fun of him, and then Abraham Ben-Ruby, who I know from TV show called ER. The fun of Marty and Chet in this movie together as a duo was just, it's one of my favorite parts. I was glad that they survived as long as they did. So, I guess we should get into it. One of the interesting things for me is, and I'm going to ask you this question, trying to figure out who's the bad guy in this movie. Because you've got the Voice and the corporation or whoever they are, but imagine that all of this kind of devolves over a couple of hours. They so quickly go from being, busy at their desks doing their jobs to shooting each other and killing each other in any way possible.
The movie works very meta as far as as a social experiment, a social commentary. It's this, Lord of the Flies cranked up to 11, it's like at first, they're all, we're going to work together. This is ridiculous. We're sane, civilized human beings, and we're going to find a way to handle this correctly and without panicking and overthinking and jumping to conclusions. We're adults. We can handle this. Within 2.5 hours, there's one person left, and it's a complete bloodbath, because once you start throwing out civilization and sanity, and it becomes a killer be killed fight for survival, the true, who somebody really is comes out fast.
It really does. It really does. And I didn't feel it at the very beginning when the first announcement was made, but after they got to see exactly what was coming or what was going to happen if they didn't comply, there were definitely signs that some people were already going to want to comply with the request or to figure out how, versus the Mike Milches who were not going to do such a thing because, we're human beings. This is, we can't do this.
Yeah.
And yet,
to jump all the way to the end. Again, we've watched it. If you're listening, hopefully you've watched it, but you're getting spoiled all the way through no matter what anyway. If I'm thinking, you've seen this 100,000 times. So, Mike doesn't actually kill anybody up until the very end.
Correct. And I will say this. It comes out earlier that Barry has this special forces training. Well, it was no match for Mike's impressive use of a tape dispenser.
I have a little note about that. Death by tape dispenser. Because the whole time I'm watching that scene, instead of the practical effects or the just the idea of it being a tape dispenser, I went more behind the scenes of, I was really wondering how much fun James Gunn had writing that up. How does this final kill at the end of this experiment, how do we get creative with it? What was the conversation that led to finally going, we're writing the tape dispenser scene? That's what I was thinking about. It's you could have gone through a billion different things, but that's what they landed on, and how fun was that to come up with that, because it's creative and very unique.
Well, and some of the items that they used in killing were related to the office, or at least would be found somewhat in this corporate building that had a cafeteria. Some things you would find. But a lot of it was done with guns. which, you know, in some ways you could look at it as a cop-out because a lot of the marketing was showcasing office equipment. And so it would have been cool to see more office equipment used. Although there was... Probably if I was in an office building, what would I go to for my weapon? Leandra totally did exactly that's exactly where I would go for an item, because I think it would be the most effective. But we also got to see it used really well in Megan a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, the paper cutter blade. It's not the first time we've seen that used.
No.
It's because I think there was one in Mayhem too, wasn't there? Probably.
Yes, and wasn't there one back in the faculty even?
Possibly. It's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there was one in the science room. But yeah, I feel like it's not the first time. She did a good job. I'm already liking where this conversation has gone so far. I think it's going to be great. So we should go back and start with Mike Milch.
And my notes this time are a little interesting because I don't have a lot of character stuff. It's just more random kind of stuff that I'll throw in and out. Like, again, you know, I'll jump all over because Mike, as the main character, we kind of see who he is, get set up, and then it's just kind of thrown into the mix. So it's going to be like, here's where we happen, and then here's the end. A lot of the middle part, I'm going to skip over, but, you know, you fill in what you want.
It's kind of all over the place. Like, he's involved in some of the beginning stuff, but then there are just different groups of characters.
I do wonder how somebody like Mike winds up in this job, you know, where he doesn't even really know what he's doing. This building out is so remote in a different country, out in the middle of nowhere, like security setup. I don't think they usually have this kind of like the armed soldiers and stuff I think are new, but like still like the security fences and just being away from everything. It's interesting.
Well, and he's fighting on the phone with one of his coworkers who didn't go into the office. He's at home sick.
Lucky
like,
person. they chose the right day to be sick.
Yes. Unfortunately, Danny picked the wrong day to start a new job.
Yeah.
But we'll get to
this is secluded office building out in Colombia. I mean, at least they probably have really great coffee. But other than that, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's probably a given. I don't really know what his
I don't think anybody
does.
knows what they really do there.
No.
I tried to piece it together. The most I got about like Belko is it was like, cause we overhear one guy on the phone talking to somebody and then there's like the video at the end when he's scuffling with Barry. But it's like, so Belko as a company, their job is to just hire Americans to work in other countries. And that's pretty much what they do.
Yeah.
From what I gather is it's just like a hiring firm where they help Americans get hired at more Belko locations across the world. It's like, but what do you actually do? We make more employees.
Yeah.
We hire people. Okay, but to do what? To hire more people. I don't
I feel like they hire people to work for other companies too. Like it's part of the process. Like they find Americans who want to go overseas and work in different industries, and so they help find those employees. I don't know. I mean, HR department is what looks like it's one person and an assistant. That's not much for 80 employees. I mean,
80. Not counting all the like local people that work there for who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, they were sent home. I think that would have been my first clue, watching them get turned around to go home. And Mike does put it together. He's like, they don't have chips in their heads. We do. Like, he starts to put it together even though people get dismissive of it with him. He does start to put things together.
Well, that aspect, and then looking out the window and seeing the armed guard like walking into the hangar, and it's just like something is definitely off.
But if I was going to work at Belko in a department, I'd want to work in his, because he had the fun people. He had Keith, he had Peggy, he had a couple of others in there. They were all pretty fun. They all seemed fun. And they were the ones who, throughout the movie, kept working together on the different projects, like making the banners and just, trying to take care of each other with all the other craziness that was going on. The interesting thing about this is every character had a name for the most part. The problem is you don't really know who it is unless you piece everything together. And there's actually a Wikia for Belko Experiment where you can actually go and look up some of the things. It's like, oh yeah, so that's that guy, and this is this guy. And I'm a nerd when it comes to stuff like this, so I like to look stuff
So Mike, we learned pretty quickly him and Leandra are a thing. And then also Wendell and Leandra are a thing. I mean, only in Wendell's fantasies in his head, but,
Wendell. Yes. Yeah. So creepy. I mean, even right down to the instant messaging. He's instant messaging with Leandra, and his picture is creepy. Like, it's just, he's not good. He's not good. He thinks he's in the, to me, he's one of those wannabe people. He wants to be in the same world as Barry Norris, who's like the CEO or COO or whatever. He wants to be one of the cool dudes, one of the cool people, wants to be a sidekick, wants to be part of this clique. But he clearly is not at that level of cool. Yeah. So, the voice comes over the intercom. They notice these weird things happening when they're coming into work. And then there's the voice over the intercom that they think is a joke. Although Mike is, I don't know if Mike, I think he wants to hope it's a joke, but I don't think that he necessarily thinks that it is a joke. As time goes on and they're just kind of in the lobby hanging out, waiting before the heads start exploding. He's just in the lobby hanging out and talking with Barry Norris and the others, and he's just trying to, is this real? And everyone's convinced.
Yeah, with just the voiceover. Yeah, you're like, okay. Which is because Barry goes and checks in with the intercom thing. It's like, well, there's nobody in here. It's not coming from inside. Then when all of the windows and doors all get shuttered up with just completely unpassable metal and stuff, and you're like, okay, things are a little more serious, you would think. But this place seems sus from the beginning. Again, we haven't talked about the trackers in their heads other than you mentioned the explosion. Yeah. Like when a tracker is part of a job, requirement, it's always a little sus. I mean, their reasoning that is given to Danny, makes sense to a degree, I guess, but still, it's a little sus. And I'm not even talking some kind of conspiracy, Mark of the Beast, ridiculous, whatever, nonsense. But just in general, it's still a little sus, though.
It is. It's a little suspect. It's a little suspect. It is not something that I would want to do for a job. Yeah. It seems like they'd be tracking you. I don't know. I just find it it would be a lot of Big Brother, oh, you want to know how many times I go to the restroom in a day, or how much time I spend on my lunch. Am I staying out of the office?
If it's something you could opt into, especially for the women in the office, it's if you feel like you're in danger or whatever, then you can opt into having a tracker put, probably not in your, why are they you got to put it in my head. We can't just do a little arm thing or something there's so many questions I would have had. I don't know why they're just okay with it. But yeah, it'd be opted in. It's if you feel like that's something you need so that we can find you if something happens, then sure. But for it to be a requirement, it's yeah.
Yeah, there are certainly other ways that you can go about it.
Can we just have an office-wide find my phone, find a friend situation, and we're all just in a network together or something? I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I get that it's dangerous, but why would you also not put it in your local employees too? Do you not care about their safety? I mean,
right.
I'd have to question it. Is this for all employees or just this specific set of employees?
Which that's what it seems. And so Mike then putting two and two together. Well, Barry is the one that really notices, like, that's not a gunshot. And then, yeah, so Mike seeing, oh, okay, the trackers are being detonated and others are figuring that out. That's where he goes to try to remove his, which is, yeah, makes sense, the first thing. And then the voice comes over and scolds him and warns him. And that's where everybody realizes, like, they can see that he's doing that, and they're seeing people pulling cameras out of the walls. And, oh, we have all been under intense surveillance everywhere we go and everything we do for this whole time. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Exactly. And so they basically tell Mike that if he continues to try to take it out of his head, that they will detonate it anyway. And so he stops.
It takes him a little bit. Mike plays this interesting role of, he's very impulsive, but it's always like for a good reason. He doesn't get impulsive, like he doesn't get panicky or whatever like other people do.
No.
He spends most of his time trying to be the level-headed voice of reason, but he also will take steps to do things that need to be done. But not like in the way that Barry would say, oh, it needs to be done, with everyone in mind. To even if that includes shooting, the hose and mechanics to the blowtorch so they can't use that anymore.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to hurt anybody, but he's like, look, we've got to think clearly and stop jumping to conclusions and doing ridiculous things.
Yeah, you're right. He does keep the greater group of people in his mind as far as when he does things, he's thinking about the safety of the whole group. Where when it starts to kind of devolve into every man for himself, not that long after the initial killing, because they come on the intercom and they say, we're gonna, you have 30 minutes to kill 2 people, or if you don't, you'll see the consequences. And they don't kill 2 people. They're just kind of waited out. And then the powers that be, or the new god, as Barry calls them at one point, they kill 4 people. There was a man in the lobby, and the girl on the roof, and the girl in the cafeteria, and then another man in the lobby. And one of them, I guess, was a friend of Evan's. So, and then Barry goes and inspects and really says, no, this is coming from inside. And they figure out that it's the chips in their head, not a gunshot.
The game or the challenge, the test, what they have to do. It's simple. It's terrible, but simple is you kill the chosen number of people within the given time frame, or double the amount of that will be killed by the ones that are running this experiment. It's very simple.
Right. Yeah.
But a lot to go off of it. So yeah, this half model, half CGI building is about to be the location of some crazy stuff going down.
Yeah.
When they panned out and showed it from like the sky view, and I'm like, so the parking lot and the cars are definitely models, but the rest of that is CGI.
Yes. Yes. I thought it was quite funny how the cars all were parked and the models were... It didn't match up. Let's just say the CGI for this was not great. It was, the practical effects were decent. CGI was just, there's one scene in particular when we get to it that I'm just like, yep, okay, yeah. Bad CGI. Just real bad.
I don't have many other notes about Mike until the end of the movie, kind of because a lot of it then just becomes, like I said, him trying to be level-headed and failing with everyone else around him failing. And then, just seeing everybody dying kind of just getting pushed around, butted around, and finally having to accept at the end. It's like, because it comes down to after Leandra dies from getting hit, getting shot by...
He's done.
By Barry.
He's
yeah,
so
then it
pissed.
just becomes, all right, it's the two of us left. And then that kill or be killed mentality comes in. It's like, well, when it's just me and the person who's been killing the most people, there's no more, oh, let's handle this sanely and civilly. Now it's like, if I'm walking out of here, I do what I have to do then.
Yep. Give me the tape dispenser. I'll bash his effing head in because he shot Leandra. And she had earlier in the movie said to him, should we be taking this slower, their relationship? And by the time we get a couple of hours later, she tells him that she loves him. And then she dies. And he's got no fucks left to give at that point. He jumps out of the locker and goes after Barry. And they beat each other up until he gets the tape dispenser. And I thought the presentation going in the background was a riot. Like, it's projected onto the screen all while they're fighing. It's just
now's the time for you to find your destiny. Yeah, well, he did.
Is there a cartoon that goes with the power of Grayskull or something?
He-Man?
I don't know. He-Man, yeah. That's what I was thinking, honestly. Was something like that. Like, this is, you know, like the tape dispenser is just going to get hit by a bolt of lightning and it's going to be something great. Not a sword, a tape dispenser.
By the power of Scott!
And I thought that was... yeah. That would make a great ending.
Yeah, so he's the last standing at the end of everything. And then we see him really flip into a very different mentality. He kind of becomes the like action hero badass. Where he's brought out by the soldiers and is brought to the voice, this man behind everything, and the people here and we see that he had a plan in that he took the bombs, the detonators in the heads of the people who were killed without being detonated that Marty and Chet had been collecting, which their plans for them, Leandra says, oh, it's a great idea. No, it's not. But you know what? At least they were doing something productive and dream big, kids, dream big.
Exactly. They were trying. I mean, everyone else was just trying to kill each other, but Chet and Marty were just trying to figure out a way out. And Marty's just like, so we can get out of here.
It's like, okay, you do that. You sure.
You do that. If it makes you feel better,
if it makes
go
you
ahead.
Happy. But it does come into handy because Mike ends up with them after Leandra shows him. It's like, oh, that's what they were working on, and he pockets them. And so as he's being carried out, he very, while kind of wiggling around and stumbling around and looking like he's, resisting and pulling away, but really he's slipping these detonators into pockets and pouches and parts of the soldiers, and then even runs up and grabs the voice, the leader, and plants one in his pocket and stuff too, or maybe a couple. Slips them onto them, and he fights back. Blows them up, making sure to be careful of his own, on the board.
Yes. But he flips all the other switches.
Kind of incapacitating everybody, grabs one of the guns and takes them out, and then of course the voice, as he's credited, this leader, he's been watching him this whole time, so then he tries to turn it on him. He's like, wait, you are the voice of reason. I could tell that you didn't want to hurt anybody. You believe life is sacred. And I could tell him, him thinking, yeah, not yours.
No. I knew he was out. I knew he was going to take him out because at that point, he'd lost everything and he was just going to let it all out. And I was glad that he took those little bombs and did that because I felt like this is this is Chet and Marty. This is their contribution to the end of this movie is they meticulously surgically removed all of those little trackers. And I love that Mike Milch just took them and took care of it. But what we learn after that is that this is not an isolated incident.
Yeah, which I was thinking is like, okay, now he should probably revisit the idea of removing his own detonator from his head again. Now you should do that. That switchboard still exists. Somebody can still have access to it. Like, maybe you should do that. Yeah, because as you're saying, apparently there's a stage 2 that seems to be involving all the survivors of all the other Belko locations worldwide that have done this same thing.
And now we know what Belko is really about. It is basically probably some rich businessmen put all of this together so that they could conduct a huge social experiment for their own reasons, I guess.
Yeah, so
and
stage 2. Does that mean there's a sequel? Does that mean there's anything coming? I have a couple little things. I looked up one thing. When asked about a sequel, I have some answers from the Guns. Sean Gunn, his exact words are, "I don't know. The movie was, I guess, a little bit of a success, but it's always hard to guess that sort of thing. As of now, there are no plans that I know of, but we sure had a lot of fun doing that."
He did. When you meet his character, he's on the roof having, some marijuana. Like, he's smoking pot on the roof with his friends because there's nothing else they can do.
However, James Gunn, with that same question, had an answer for someone saying, "I have it all in my head. I've got the next 2 in my head. And if people want a sequel, I will give them a sequel."
Oh, I wish
so. Even though James Gunn has said that, as of now, there's nothing in the works that's known. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish that they would, but I also don't want them to do it unless they try to follow a similar formula.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea that James Gunn says he's got 2 more movies in his head. He knows what he wants to do with it if he ever continued.
Of course he does, but I don't want him to direct it. Like, I want him to do the story and let someone else, direct it. That way he doesn't feel the pressure. Because when they first were approaching him about directing it, he was going through a divorce, and he could not, he's like, "I can't go through this. Like, I can't direct this movie right now. I'm already in a dark place."
But maybe I'd be okay with him coming back to it, even as director. I mean, now that he has shown that, between Guardians and the new Suicide Squad movies, that he's got a knack for this. Because, it's dark, and it's gory, and it's got stuff to say, but it is still James Gunn. There is such a healthy dose of dark humor and comedy mixed into this, for sure.
Yeah, I liked it. That's one of the things I liked about it, because the comedy, there were enough comedic parts that it wasn't completely hopeless and dark, but there were also the dark places were super dark, and I liked the mix of the
you've got to have a good little healthy, dark humor in that mix. We could hear your whole conversation. It's a cubicle. For the record, I think he was way out of line with the hey heys. Yeah.
Oh God, I loved Marty's line when he was talking about. He was talking to Leander. She's like, "You're gonna tell them where we are? Some of these people are total dicks," and I'm like, "Yes, they are." The world according to Marty. Loved it. I love that Sean Gunn, even though his brother wasn't directing this one, jumped in to have a role in it anyway. Yeah. So the Gunns were actually represented in the movie by his appearance, plus the script. There's so many quotes and just different things that I wrote down as I was going through it. It's different, as we've said before, to watch a movie and then podcast on it. Because it's looking at it a different way. But honestly, when I watched this one, I was just like, I know this movie. Watching it was a little bit different, but I also just felt like it was a comfortable place, I guess, because I've seen it so many times. Which is kind of odd if you think about it. This is not an easy movie to watch, I guess. I mean, it's short, so it's not super long, so it's easy to digest that way, but it's not one that, you know, it's not a rom-com that most people would throw on in the background
right.
while they were doing things. I don't throw rom-coms on in the background. This is what I put on in the background.
Yeah, so I summed up kind of Mike stuff. I don't know if you had any more, because I skipped over most of the movie, but I covered what I wanted to talk about with him.
There were some funny parts because Evan and Mike, after Evan basically keeps them from being able to use the blowtorch, Evan and Mike are on the elevator just kind of talking about how cool it is, and Leandra is like having none of it because she realizes what he did could mean to something bigger later that could come back to bite him, but they're not really paying attention to that. You know, Evan and Mike are just, you showed them. Because it kind of made me go back to high school. Like, you've got the Barry Norris and his, you know,
I had a couple different names for them throughout the movie.
I called them the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. But then there were 5 of them.
It just kept growing.
Because Bradley joined them.
And then Tony?
At one point. Antonio, yes. He's scary. He wields a meat cleaver or a knife or whatever he has. Yeah, no, he's very scary. Only Mike would notice that the blowtorch is missing. And I'm like, yep, the 4 horsemen. Yep.
Yeah.
So we can talk about some other thing. I mean, there are other characters in here that we can talk about some of the parts with them. I mean, Mike's involved with some things, but it's more of like little group efforts at different times.
So looking through here, Leandra would be next, but I don't have a lot, so I might just throw all of my thoughts out on her real quick and then let you talk about whatever you want to as well. Of course, we see her being kind of harsh with Mike early on. I feel it is a little harsh, but when they have that conversation, really at the end of the day, it's because she's worried that he's gonna get himself killed being too not self-righteous, but just righteous, just too... You're trying so hard to do the right thing that you're gonna get on the bad side of the people who are doing the wrong thing, and you're gonna get yourself killed. You need to... She's almost like chewing him out for not being selfish enough, because it's not helpful in that situation, she doesn't think.
And that's when they basically have been given the ultimatum that they have to kill 30 people or they're going to kill 60, meaning the 30 or however many they kill plus additionally to add up to 60 people. And Mike is trying to get Barry to not consider actually going through with killing people. And that's when Leandra gets really on his case about it, because she knows that people are only out for themselves. When it comes down to it, that's how it's going to end up being. And she was right. At the end of the day, that's what, you know, even the people that were good and were with Mike's group till almost the end, at the end of the day, it came down to that. They had to fight for themselves. It's just what had to happen for them. Because there could only be one winner. One winner.
Yeah, and the conversation broke down pretty quickly after, this like 30 ultimatum was really realized, like this is what's going to happen. Because, you play along and kill to protect more people versus Mike's way of this very moral and ethical issue of killing people in the first place. It's the trolley problem at its best and most insane. Like Mike's kind of breaking down Leandra, like he's thinking about like, what is this? And he's like, that's what this whole job is we've been here. It's all been leading up to this moment in this organization. Like he's spelling out exactly what's happening. It's like, that's what this was about. And I like that Leandra, she goes, no, that can't, she goes, that's impossible. Impossible. And I'm watching going, Leandra, I hate to break it to you, but I read the synopsis earlier and no, he's right. That's exactly what's happening.
Absolutely.
You should pay better attention to the movie you're in.
He did try to tell them too. He's like, do you really think they're going to let us out of here after killing 30 people? Like, they weren't even thinking about that. They were just thinking about buying themselves time. But he was right. Like, what was the end game? It wasn't about let's kill 30 people. It was, okay, we're going to kill 30 people this round. What's it going to be next? Like, it seems to be growing and growing and growing. They really weren't considering it. Yeah. He was. He knew in his head what was going to happen next. He had already decided. And that's why they couldn't give in, but they had to.
How do they decide which ones are the ones that they detonate? It's like whoever's higher build in the movie. No, they can't do that. I mean, they're watching everything. It's like, is it just from like a standpoint of them being like, it's more interesting if this person's still alive?
Yeah, maybe it is. Like, we don't.
It's not at random. It's like, who are the people who are like the most entertaining to watch from their standpoint? Like. Somebody who's just been hiding out. But then Danny spent the whole movie hiding and she never got detonated, so...
No, that was great, though. When we get to Danny, I will talk about the great injustice of Danny and her demise, because... Not cool. I was not happy. She earned a bigger, better death than that, honestly.
Yeah. It was just... I kind of like it. Actually, I think I'm on the opposite end of that. I like that it's that it's just completely pointless. Like it pulls the expectation from you. It's kind of like this pull the rug out from under your feet in a fun way. Again, it's almost like a level of dark comedy. It's funny. It's funny in a dark way that she spends the whole movie sneaking around and hiding and surviving and climbing through elevator shafts. And it's like, oh, she's a badass. She's a survivor. Only just boom, headshot, done. Like, to be an afterthought. It's dark. It's funny in a dark way. It kind of is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she did save Mike's life by turning off the lights at the moment that she did. Because that changed the course of the movie. Well, of course it had to, because if Mike had died at that point, we couldn't have had that, right?
What kind of movie would it be?
He can't. Right. Of course not. We can't have
Let's see, a couple other like Leandra notes that I was on that. She chooses to spare Terry, which shows her humanity there, which makes sense. I kind of like that given that opportunity, she defends herself and then realizes when she's not in immediate danger, she's like, that's not who I am. I'm not going to do that. Of course, with that decision, that brings the final body count of that round to 29. So they're one short. So now 31 extra ones are going to die, including Terry. So womp womp.
Yeah, we lost some good people in that round. I mean, there were some people, like, we lost Terry, we lost Leota, Peggy. I watched some of the extras, and there's some deleted scenes between Mike and Peggy after they kill Antonio, or after Peggy kills Antonio. And I wish it had been in the movie, because I just appreciated having that extra look at that. I also liked Peggy and Mike's relationship. I thought, he liked his team of people. Obviously, because when he went to work on whatever project, they went with him. You knew people were going to die. I mean, in watching this, it made me think, too, of Squid Game in some ways, just because of the way that it just was random at times, how things worked out, and then people were gone. And poor Keith is excited because he thinks that he's made it and he's the last one to go. Yeah. Which is sad.
Leandra also she runs into Wendell and finally can rid herself of that creepazoid. So that was... She got that moment. Unfortunately, in that R.I.P. Marty and Chet, that was their end. But But at least Wendell was taken care of by her.
By X to the face. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. I was so excited. I cheered at that moment. I was bummed about Marty and Chet. There's also a deleted scene where Leandra is comforting Marty after he got shot in the neck. As he's, like, bleeding out, she's just kind of holding his head and just talking to him or, you know, trying to just be there, I guess. Yeah, that sucked, but watching her take out Wendell was amazing. And she called him out on shit, too. She's like, that's Tyson. He was your friend. And then Wendell is just trying to blow it off like, well, you know, it's not. It's Barry. I don't know how many he has. Like, this is just a game of capture the flag or paintball in the woods. I mean, that you're not really hurting anyone after he's taken a meat cleaver to his friend.
So that's all I had on her. So I was going to throw out my thoughts.
I liked her as a character. I thought she was a bit badass, but not in a way of being a superhero. I thought that she, you know, calling out Mike and getting him to understand, you know, that people are going to be out for themselves and it's something he needed to hear. Being very bold to tell Mike to come and get her over the loudspeaker, which meant that everyone was going to know where they were. You know, and being honest, you know, with Mike and saying you're going to be basically inferring you're going to be on the radar. They're going to want, you know, you're going to be in danger because you're looked at, you know, like a troublemaker, like you're questioning everything that's being done. So the powers that be are not going to want you to be around, basically. I think that's what, you know, she tries to get through his head. But he's just trying to be a good person. He doesn't want anyone to die. Yeah. He really doesn't devolve into, like you said, he doesn't evolve into having that kill or be killed instinct until the end when he has nothing left. Everyone is dead. And so he's just like, gonna take him out. I mean, Leandra tells him, you can't save everyone. And that just makes him, like, he's just like, he can't fathom it. You know? Because he's a good person. You know, we don't get a lot of deep information on any of these characters. It's really kind of you know, we get a little bit, but this movie has never been about being such a deep concept that you have to, like, have philosophical conversations about characters. It is what it is, and it doesn't apologize, I guess is what I'm saying.
All right. Well, next, Barry, and then just kind of his growing posse. Notes about them. If you're ready to move to there.
I am. Barry seems like an okay guy in the beginning.
He really seems to be with Mike on, like, let's calm everybody down. Let's make sure we're level-headed. Let's deal with this as adults. But he's also the first one to really start throwing the conversation around of maybe we just do what they say to do so we can have our best chance of survival.
Yeah. He does. He sits in there and says maybe we should, you know. And then Terry, who is supposedly very, very good friends with Mike, is just kind of saying, but if it can save more, you know, if we kill 30 but it saves everyone else, isn't it worth it? And Mike is not having it.
Yeah, but then
it's kind of...
They devolve into this, like, us versus everyone else mentality, like their own little special club pretty quickly. Especially, you know, Barry goes to Evan and says, hey, it's like, he's not buying that. You know, it's like, give me the keys to the armory so that I can hold on to the guns, and then that way they're safe. And it's like, no. I like that Evan is like, I'm not going to give them to you. Like, he was very smart in that case. He's like, how about they're just safe locked up? where they're at. We don't,
Yeah.
why do you need to have them? I'm the boss. Okay. I don't care.
He's like,
yeah.
I quit.
They don't answer to you then.
I was like,
yeah.
good.
And there's never really a good, like, he was trying to, like, cover up his reasoning for wanting the guns, but no, it's this power trip thing. Because finally, we wouldn't want somebody to break into the armory and get the weapons out, so we're going to break into the armory and get the weapons out.
Exactly. And what do? They break into the armory to get the weapons out. I mean, come on.
And so it starts, Barry, Terry, and Wendell have their trio of Team Tough Guy, I called it at first. Is because, they have families, so we matter more than other people. I don't know about Wendell. He probably doesn't, but he's just a psychopath who's attached himself to them.
Wendell had a blast with this, honestly. He's like I think it's Kiriyama from Battle Royale who just goes out to be on it because he wants to kill people. I mean, that's how I feel about Wendell. I think that's how
Finally,
he is.
my calling. He's the one that kind of really crosses the line. He stabs Evan to get the keys. Or Evan throws the keys down, and so he stabs him. And I like, again, the dark comedy of the lion. He's just like, well, he threw the keys down. He's like, and stabbing him's going to make them fly back up here?
Well, he was going to have to go anyway. Mm-hmm. And that just showed you that they were, they'd already bought into the plan of killing 30 people.
And so then the bad guy brigade, another name for them, then had access to the armory. And that's when, after they had access to the armory, I switched them to a third name, where they became the Armed and Angry Assholes. Where they continue to grow in ranks.
Triple A, okay, I get it.
So we had the Team Tough Guy, we had T. I like alliteration, if you didn't know. So then bad guy brigade, little BG alliteration, and then Armed and Angry Assholes became the next one.
Yep, I think it's great. It's AAA, and it's not for your car.
And then they round everybody up in the lobby, and then while they're doing so, you see a not so normal guy notices Danny hiding down there and chooses to leave her alone and hiding down in the boiler room area.
Bradley, yes. He's the one that had a kind of given her the eyes earlier in the day because this was her first day on the job. And he kind of showed an interest in her and he left her alone.
And then, you see Barry kind of devolve where he's still kidding himself and others that he's like, oh, I'm making the hard decisions and doing what needs to be done as the boss and as the leader. But no, you kind of see, because he's choosing people to live or die. And at first he's, anyone with young kids gets to live, but then we're going to immediately condemn anyone over the age of 60 and then realizing we still don't have enough people. So then he gets to handpick the other victims. Like, what gives him that right as the boss? And obviously at this point, Mike is on his shit list.
Yeah. The people that he's picking as he's
You can tell it's like people that have like wronged him or he's been annoyed with, or all of his employees, like he's thinking is like, all right, who took too many sick days? Who did? There's the one lady, I never get to know her name. She was real annoying. I know whenever she was in the lineup, and then he shoots her and I was like, and managers everywhere suddenly felt a sense of relief. They couldn't explain it, but they did.
Was it that? Are you talking about
whoever
Samantha,
haircut lady with wild eyes McManager Slayer? He was just real terse with everyone all the time.
The one that told Danny that she needed to. Yeah. Yes, her. Oh yes, yes. There was her. Yeah, she has a name. What is her name? Oh. Is it not Lorena? No, Lorena was the later girl. She has a name. I don't remember what it is, though. And that's kind of bugging me because I know who a lot of them
Ask
are.
Target. I'm sure she's on a list somewhere.
List at Target. Okay.
Don't let this woman in. Don't let her bully you.
Yeah. She just closes her eyes and is like, why would you not try to fight? At least you know that you gave everything. The thing is, the people that were in the lineup at least 3 of them were from Mike's department. And then you have Mike. So it's like, okay, do you have something against that team of people? Do you not like the ant farm that they have? Is there something wrong with that? You can
clearly see that, like, the power's already to his head. And then it's when Danny shuts off the lights and chaos ensues and people running around. Then when it says, how many they had, you know, one of them is trying to count the bodies in the lobby to kind of do the math. And he literally says, don't count, just go, get as many as you can. And I was like, doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose of the greater good mentality that you had, Barry? So at this point now, you're just admitting that you're on a murderous power trip. Got it.
Yep. And it's only been a couple hours. And we've devolved into this. Yeah, it just continues to... it's a power trip. You know, and I like that Vince, who's the HR guy, actually calls him out earlier on, well, not all of us are at the same advantages as others, you know, with special forces training. Basically throwing a barb at him for this to be a situation that he could totally be in control of because he's had training. You know, he knew how to calm everyone down. He was able to take care of that. But he also knew what to do, rounded everybody up and got them all down. And Wendell doesn't even need an excuse. He'll kill anyone. Well,
yeah, because we see after the 60, you know, with what they do plus the extra 31, then that's the final part of the game is whoever is left with the most kills, or it really comes down to who's just left, the last one standing.
Right.
But yeah, most kills is the one who survives, gets to walk out. So Barry's holding the current record, so he takes out like 1 or 2 more, and then his plan was just to go up to his office and lock himself away and wait it out and hope he got the most. While Wendell's trying to play catch up by playing serial killer at the same time.
Yeah, he had the meat cleaver, and he was going around, like, chopping everybody up.
And then even Vince, that you mentioned there, being a voice of reason earlier, now he's flipped on his mentality because, well, I got 1, so I might as well just try to, you know, win this thing. So he just flips on it and starts shooting people.
Yeah, he kills his assistant. I have to say this. I loved when Bradley was trying to turn the lights back on, and Vince just showed up and knocked him down, and then everyone came in and beat him. Because it's like, well, you know, you might be cute, but you're a bit of an asshole, and you're part of that
And the oppressed rise up and free themselves from the shackles of their tormentors through knives and stomping.
Yep. And then, unfortunately, what ended up happening is a lot of people in that group of people died, and then it was basically Vince is still there with his assistant, Razia, and another random man. And he just apologizes and starts shooting because there is no choice. They've been given the final challenge, which is whoever has the most kills.
Yeah. And so I mentioned wins. Barry, taking off to go to the top, just hide out. But he doesn't quite make it to his office because he gets stuck in the elevator because Roberto got in the way of it going up. In one way or another,
he was great.
He kind of, you know, gummed up the works a little bit, so to speak.
Yeah. Danny was a lot quicker to get out of that situation. Roberto, not so much. I did think it was funny that when the voice is reading or telling the stats of who has how many kills, and she's listed as having 1.
He just slowly takes his arm off of her.
He slowly takes his arm away.
That's a funny moment for me. I like that. Yeah.
It's like, okay. It's like, it was kind of an accident, but Lonnie was real freaked out.
Yeah, because that goes back to, Bud and Lonnie, which James Gunn mainstays, I mentioned earlier, Michael Rooker and David Desmalkin. Where... You know, Bud and Lonnie are seeing if they can torch their way out, and they can't. So then they're back downstairs trying to figure stuff out, but then, Lonnie goes into panic mode. He just loses it, and he accidentally kills Bud while he's freaking out. Danny's hiding down there and sees it, so then he just doubles down on, like, panic defense mode, and then she ends up killing him in self-defense as he's spiraling. Yeah.
I was real sad, honestly, that Lonnie and Bud didn't last longer. Because, I mean, Michael Rooker he's got an element of comedy in whatever he's doing, and I really wanted to see.
As somebody who has been blessed by being in the personal presence of Michael Rooker multiple times in a room with him speaking and talking with people and being ridiculous, he is a force, but it's always so much fun. Like I said, it's like, yeah, he's an insane person, but in the best way. Like, some of my favorite moments have been being in a room with him because I know it's going to be an entertaining time.
Yep. When I was doing some research, which I didn't do a lot, but when I was doing research, I came across this Lego version of the preview or the trailer for
nice.
Belko. And the fun thing about it, this is the fun thing about it. You're watching it, and it's got all the voices and everything, and they've turned everyone into Legos except Michael Rooker and Bud. The character of Bud is actually Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy. And I'm just like, oh, that's perfect. It was so fun.
So, yeah, I'm trying to see if I have any notes at all. Just kind of other random stuff. The Spanish versions of songs, I Will Survive at the beginning, and then, like, later on, like, during, like, the, like, lobby killing scene, and you had this, like, California Dreamin'. They're just, those were great music choices, but James Gunn and music choices go hand in hand. He knows what he's, oh my gosh. I mean, talk about Guardians, you mentioned that. Like,
yeah. Exactly. I have to admit that I have both of those versions on a playlist just because I loved it so much. It's just, it's just fun.
Yeah.
And different.
I think we talked about Danny pretty much. Yeah. She's new, seems to be fitting in all right, but yeah, you mentioned picked the absolute worst day to start a new job. And then, I think I've covered pretty much her because, I talked about like that stuff. And then she spends most of the movie just kind of in hiding and the elevator shaft stuff. And then it all ends unceremoniously. I talked about, the bane of managers everywhere. Marty, I haven't talked too much about him. He was right about the experiment part on the rooftop. He was not right about them definitely being safe. Let's just say it was a mind-blowing realization that he was wrong.
Yeah, Marty kind of freaked out a bit after Lucy's head exploded. Like, her head exploded while they were on the roof, and that was it. He had to get it out. Did you get it all out? Did you get it all out? Because he didn't want it. I mean, he was just completely freaked.
Like, he seems like he's the guy who's like the conspiracy theorist hippie type on like a normal day. So he's really ramping up now. Give him everything to feed on and just, Yeah. I was afraid, though, Wendell was going to kill Leandra because she called him a pervert. Yeah, don't call me a pervert. I'm not a pervert. And I'm like, I don't know, man. The way that you're so bothered by that word that you're going to hold a knife to someone's throat for saying it, it makes me kind of think you might be. Might be. I don't know. And again, I talked about McGinley, John C. McGinley, that Wendell is the exact opposite of the actor. Just this total creep with no concept of boundaries. While, again, John C. McGinley is an angel on this earth. And then, Tyson is the other character that he's killing. His friend there is... We see the little clip of him hiding, and I'm like, okay, Indiana Jones. Yes. It's not a nuclear blast, but maybe the fridge will help you, survive the murderous coworkers. But then, no, not when Wendell is the one hunting you down. It will not.
No, he was hidden in there. Earlier, he was super nervous and neurotic in the lobby, and then he also, at one point when Marty and Chet were dumping out the water.
It's another one of those like
Marty was convinced it
very
was in the
dark
water.
humor things. You see him writing this note to his kids, and it's like real sad.
Yeah.
And then he's like interrupted by Chet coming in and just dumping the water. Did you drink any? And he's like, ah.
Yeah. So neurotic. Yeah. I think the only things that I have left are really around the music. You mentioned James Gunn knows how to put music in a movie and make it almost a character. Right down to the music that was used for the trailer for this movie. In the trailer, they used Requiem, which is by Giuseppe Verdi, and it was also used in Battle Royale. But it's just a very powerful piece of music. But then he didn't stop with that, or the Spanish versions of those songs. When they're herding them all to the lobby, they used a song called Rosalka, Song to the Moon. It was an opera piece by Yvonne Kenny. And then when the 30 additional people are being killed because they didn't meet the quota, they used Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto 1, B-flat minor, which also was incredibly impactful. I really felt like that added. And my last bit, because I found one more note, the short conversation that Barry and Mike have at the end, where Barry Norris tells him, "You didn't change a damn thing," and Mike looks at him before he takes him out with the tape dispenser and says, "Neither did you." Because in some ways moved away from survival and it became a Barry versus Mike issue. Instead of, well, let's work together to get out of here or to figure things out or whatever. It just evolved into like Lord of the Flies, like separate groups doing separate things. One group's trying to do the right thing or do something that doesn't involve killing people, while the other side is just plotting and planning on how they're going to take everybody out. So, do you have any other notes?
I am noted out.
You're noted out. Okay, well, I'm really glad that we got to do this one because, like I said, I've been wanting to for a while. It just hasn't worked with the timing. And I'm glad that we got to talk about it.
It was really fun. And now we can find out what maybe other people had to say about it, because that feedback phone is going.
Gosh.
It's like it always knows the right time.
Excellent.
All right, let me get to that. All right, we get the feedback phone answered. It looks like we do have a couple of little pieces of feedback for the Belko Experiment this week. So, I'll let you take the first one, Daphne. You get the heavy lifting this week, right?
Garrett says, "This was a really good movie, and I wish they'd do a sequel." Me too, Garrett.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that. So if you've listened to this now, then you heard our updates, our current updates on sequel plans. Nothing yet, but there's always hope. Hold on to it. It could happen. Who knows? And then, the other one this time comes from Catherine, of course, always coming through. Lots of great stuff to say, so I'll go ahead and kick it off. She says, "This was a hard watch, but hit some pretty accurate points that are true in society today. The physically stronger white men obtain weapons by any means necessary and make life or death decisions based on their panicked feelings. But the real enemy is unseen, manipulating everything from deciding which employees can enter the building to which ones will have their head chip exploded. Seeing the names beside each detonation button showed the quote-unquote study was being pushed in certain directions the entire time. I wasn't expecting Michael Rooker to be knocked off so early and kept expecting him to come back at some point, despite that dent in his head. I really thought Danny was going to be the clue to the way out, since it was her first day and I didn't think she got a chip in her head. I did laugh during the elevator scene, hardcore, but overall this was a pretty intense movie. I kept thinking of any way things could have been handled better, but without knowing the rules, people couldn't be expected to react with any logic or reason. Perhaps everyone could have written down what's important to them, kids, pets, family, etc., made copies and distributed them in the hopes that any survivors would help, but it wasn't clear from the start that there would only be one survivor. Man, that ending gave me some mixed feelings. As satisfying as it was for Mike to take out the people who organized this, I was a bit disappointed that it appeared everything was getting wrapped up nicely. But when those cameras showed that this was just part of something even bigger, my mouth dropped and the disappointment vanished. I enjoyed this movie just as much as Battle Royale, Squid Games, and The Hunger Games, though I'm in no rush for a rewatch. The perfect palate cleanser for the Belko Experiment is more Nimona. My daughter has put it on every day for the last week, sometimes twice a day, and while it's generally just background noise, she'll insist we give our undivided attention to the animal transformation montages and shadow monster scenes.
Yes!
Yay! We've got it.
I love that. I love that Nimona is the gift that keeps on giving and is the palate cleanser. Definitely. Hopefully next week's movie is a little less stressful. But we'll find out what that's going to be at the end of the episode. If you want to submit your feedback, you can do so by finding us on Facebook and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on all the podcast players, including Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Go to Run For Your Lives Podcast for all the links you'll ever need, and give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that is the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
We absolutely do. Always appreciate the feedback. And of course, speaking of sharing the love, got to give those shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. Podcastica, getting a little busy again with some more stuff, good stuff going on. Of course, again, the flagship show, the flagship universe, The Walking Dead, is back with The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, which, of course, if you know The Walking Dead stuff, if you're familiar, it is a Rick and Michonne kind of catch-up spin-off series that we're all super excited to be watching, and it is here. It's happening. Jason and Lucy have covered the first episode. They're going to have them up quick, too. I think I mentioned last week, screeners that they have access to, so, be ready for those episodes to be up and ready to go as soon as you watch the episode. And on YouTube, after it airs on AMC, they will be doing the immediate reactions on YouTube, the live reaction videos. So go check those out about 30 minutes after it's done airing on AMC. Pop over to YouTube and go check out whoever's talking about Walking Dead there. I loved the first episode. I thought it was really great.
Too.
It was a lot of kind of recap catching up on how do we get... they had a lot of questions to answer, and they spent most of the hour doing that. But it also left us with a lot of really great new information, new characters, and I think it's going to be quite a wild ride, and I'm excited to take it.
Me too. I'm so excited to have Rick back on my TV screen. And just the feel of this is a little bit different. However, there were things that happened in this episode that I was really happy about. Things that we got to see, and the ending of the episode makes me even more excited, because I thought it might take a little longer to get to that point, but it didn't.
Yeah, so I'm excited to watch that and listen along to Lucy and Jason. It was so great hearing their voices back in my heads. In my heads? All multiple heads that I have now. It was great hearing their voices back in my head, back in the car radio, and them breaking down Walking Dead stuff again. It feels like home on podcast. It
feels like the old days, right?
Yes,
it just feels like, it's familiar.
Yeah, but then other great stuff going on. Of course, we have the rewatch series that are kicking it, going strong as well, with Revisited, with Ben and Kristen going through Ted Lasso. And this week they are on Season 2, Episode 9, Beard After Hours. If you know, that episode is a wild ride. And it's so... it's crazy for Ted Lasso. And yeah, it's a great one, so definitely check that out. And then Kara and Penny... Still slaying, going through Season 3 of Buffy in its entirety this week on Episode 10, Amends. So if you're a Buffy fan, definitely go check them out as well. They are killing it over there. Big time. And then, lastly for Podcastica, always got to give a shout out for the bi-weekly, and that's every 2 weeks. Because why a word mean two very different things, and you have to always...
Yes.
You ruin the time it takes you to have a word for a thing if you then have to explain which version of that word you mean every time.
Yes.
Anyway. But yes, welcome to the Apocalypse, the improv comedy podcast with Randy and Jenny and Rob over there. Just
love it so much. I really do.
Killing it. It's so good. Like, I don't even want to give too much away, but like, you just get this like fun cast of characters that they play, plus different guests and stuff coming in to play other characters. And it's hilarious. It's just quite the odd bunch, surviving in the apocalypse and coming across all kinds of crazy shenanigans and meeting all kinds of crazy people. It's a blast, and I look forward to it every single time they're dropping a new episode.
Me
I
too.
cannot wait to listen.
I wish it came out every week because when I see it's in my feed, I know it's going to be such a fun listen. And it goes by way too fast.
Yeah. It's the only podcast in my rotation that I don't listen to at 1.5 speed. I slow it down.
Me too.
Because
yeah,
I got to live in the world with them. I don't want it going by too fast.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so lots of great Podcastica stuff. But then outside of Podcastica, we do want to give our friends over at TV Podcast Industries some love in that network and stuff they've been doing over there with those podcasts. Because they just celebrated 10 years of podcasting over there on TV Podcast Industries.
Wow.
It's a huge milestone for any network and podcast. So that's awesome. Congrats to Derek and John and Chris when he's in there and stuff with them. Just like, oh man, it's
wonderful.
Congrats, guys. 10 years is awesome.
10 years. I mean, we'll be coming up on 4 this summer, and I feel like it's gone so fast.
Right. And that's not just like 10 years of one podcast a week every now and then taking breaks sometimes. That's like they are putting out like 2 or 3 episodes a week sometimes when it gets really busy. They are covering everything, and they just work so hard over there. So if you haven't checked out TV Podcast Industries, go give them some love. Especially right now because they are working through the final season of The Bad Batch over on Disney+, the Star Wars animated series, and the FX series Shogun that just started. They covered the first 2 episodes of that, so make sure to go check that out as well.
I think it's a reboot of an old series, like maybe from the 70s or 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it's a direct reboot or if it's a different story. But yeah, I'm glad they're covering it.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. It's been getting a lot of buzz, and it will probably wind up on my list very soon. The Oscars are next weekend. I've been really like buckling down on trying to get all of my Oscar death race watches going on. But as soon as Oscars are done, I have time freed up to like get into some other stuff I want to watch. So Shogun's probably on that list. I need to jump into Avatar on Netflix, The Last Airbender, because that one's just fun. And yeah, so a lot of things I need to just like check out and watch, but Oscars take precedence.
It's almost over, Pake.
Almost there. I'm on the home stretch.
Your second Christmas of the year.
Yep.
Or the first Christmas of the year for you. The Oscars are taking place very soon. You will know who's winning, and you'll be freed up.
Yeah. So yeah, check out all of that great stuff. But make sure you do come back here next week to Run for Your Lives, because we've got a fun one for you. Daphne, what are we doing?
Well, when a new breed of airborne predators threatens the world as they know it, only a ragtag group of unlikely heroes stands between humanity and the jaws of destruction. Yes, we're going there. We are finally discussing Sharknado, the 2013 film that started a franchise.
We're doing it. It's Sharknado. It's one of the first movies, like when we first developed and started doing this podcast, it was like Jurassic Park and Cloverfield and Tremors and like, yeah, like the monster movies and stuff that we started with in that first season. And I was like, even the ridiculous stuff like Sharknado we got to do. And then it's just like sat there in our back pocket for 4 years. And it's like, it's time.
It is.
It's time.
It's time for us to do it. I think that our fans who love the shark movie coverage that we do are going to be really excited. All I will say is there's a lot of laughter.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, yeah, it's quite humorous.
Yeah.
One thing that Pake and I can tell you is we were guests on another podcast last week talking Tremors. And so if you want to check that out, you can go ahead. It's on Spotify and I think Apple Podcasts. But yeah, we talked with Levi about Tremors and a whole bunch of other stuff, like podcasting and trips and fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Tremor stuff, like, I am, and then also just great banter and conversation, then yeah, check out Talking Tremors, the podcast there, because Levi does a great job of not only talking Tremors, but then just talking in general. They do their research really well.
Oh.
Even just us, and like there's a lot of personal questions and conversation that went on, and we had a blast talking to them. It was great.
We did. I loved that. I messaged them just to tell them that it was such a blast, and the time went by so fast. And the questions were really fun, but Tremors was like an underlying thread throughout the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So it was tons of fun. But with that, we've reached the end of our episode, Pake.
Right.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.